Om Shanti, how are you? The recent triple homicide that took place in Riverside, California sets the real example of how deadly catfishing can be. If you haven't heard before, catfishing refers to using the false identity to deceive teenagers and preteens online in order to exploit them sexually. So in this incident, a former Virginia state trooper who was 28-year-old Austin Lee Edwards, who posed himself to be a teenager while he was chatting with a 15-year-old girl in Riverside, California. So one day he drove 2,600 miles all the way from Virginia to Riverside just to meet up with the girl. He killed the mother of this teenage girl called Brook Winick and also her grandparents Mark Winick and Sherry Winick. Not only that, he set the home on fire and he fled the place with the girl. Later, sheriff's deputies tracked him down and shot him dead after he opened fire. A neighbor of the dead ones said that those family members were so loving that any American would love to have them as their neighbor. They were so caring to their neighbors. After shooting Edward, they rescued the girl alive and she is now in a protective custody. And now the state police have been requesting all the parents to put filter on the mobile phones and to always check what your kids are doing, and also you need to teach your kids about how you should protect yourself from such predators. But the reality is it doesn't happen only online. It happens everywhere. So especially in India, in many states, recently we have been seeing many reports where a person, whether it's a guy or girl, they get killed by their own lover. It happens quite often. Not only should we teach our kids, but also we should teach all the adults who are totally ignorant of this particular reason that actually traps them into doing such criminal activities. People around the world in this century are brainwashed into believing that opposite gender attraction is normal, but in reality it is not. Actually, opposite sex attraction is more addictive than any other addiction that you can imagine. The desire to look at or gaze at the opposite sex starts in the childhood, but if you think it will go away as we reach adulthood, you are in for a surprise. It will never go away until death. Actually, it continues even after death in your next birth. Any desire happens in the mind, and mind is a part of your soul, which is ourselves. It shines like a tiny star in between the eyebrows, which is why Hindus have this habit of wearing religious symbols in between the eyebrows. The mind of a pure soul that enters this earth in its initial stage was very pure. It is free of any addictive thoughts. So it happened 5,000 years back when this world was heaven. We entered this planet Earth and we were called deities. We were humans. The reason we were called deities is because we were filled with divine qualities, which means we were absolutely free of five vices: lust, anger, greed, attachment and ego. We were as pure as a newborn baby. To be exact, we were as pure as God Himself. Nowadays, we mistake addictive thoughts to be happiness. If you go to a cinema, you create so much addictive thoughts regarding that movie, so that gives you happiness. That's the reason if you happen to watch the movie after a year or so, you will find it extremely boring. So it is not the actual movie that gave you happiness, but the thoughts, addictive thoughts that you created around the movie even before watching the movie, that gave you that happiness. Now you may wonder, if there was absolutely no addictive thoughts in heaven, will they be happy? Yes, they were happy. They were happy constantly, because the happiness that you get by seeing movies, seeing opposite sex, or eating anything, or witnessing anything, they are short-lived. They can't last any longer. So as soon as the happiness goes away, your mind goes into the depressed mode, so it will look for any addictive thoughts that was previously stored in your mind, so it emerges. So that would be mostly sexual thoughts. In other words, if you get sexual thoughts even at a subtle level, it means your mind is depressed. It is not happy. But in heaven, we were constantly happy, mainly because we were constantly soul conscious. We considered ourselves to be the soul that sees through the eyes, that listens through the ears, that performs all activities using this body, but we are not this perishable body. We are constantly aware of this, which is why we are able to stay happy constantly, because happiness is the true nature of the soul itself. So it is because we were constantly blissful and peaceful, we were always content. So we did not seek happiness from outside. That is the main reason we are not addicted to any of the five vices or sensory pleasures for the first 2500 years while this world was heaven. After that, this world becomes hell gradually, mainly because we forget the fact that we are originally souls. Instead, we start to consider ourselves to be this visible, perishable body. So we can no longer experience the happiness that we once experienced within ourselves. So we had to seek pleasure from the external environment. That's how we get addicted to sensual pleasures, and also got eventually addicted to the five vices: lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. Actually, these five vices, they are the doors to sorrow and pain, but unfortunately we mistake them to be the source of happiness. Whatever movie you enjoy, that must have some element that triggers your ego, or attachment, or lust, or anger. So you mistake that for some kind of happiness. That's how we all become mentally unstable. So that's how the whole world is now. So especially when your mind gets habituated to these addictive thoughts, what happens is our soul loses its power. When the soul is depleted of its power of purity, it can no longer have this capacity to differentiate between right and false. So it will constantly create thoughts that gives us some kind of intoxication. So the addictive thing that gives the more number of addictive thoughts is none but sex. Actually, there is nothing in man or women. It is just our thoughts that we create by watching many movies, listening to love songs, that we start create fantasizing thoughts about the opposite gender. The more thoughts you create around opposite gender, the more addictive you become to the opposite gender or a specific person. In previous generations, people get married, but they don't get to be with together all the time. So, and moreover, they won't be creating fantasizing thoughts, as there were no movies or anything to corrupt humans' mind. And that is the reason no sexual crimes happened in the past. But now in this internet era, people just spend the whole night and day chatting with each other, so they want to stay constantly intoxicated with the lustful thoughts. That's how they get so addicted, and it reaches to a point that they can no longer stay away from each other, and they want to have each other no matter what, irrespective of their age, race, religion, or whatever. That is what exactly happened here. And moreover, as much as you got addicted to lustful thoughts, your soul is going to be depleted of its power more and more. Thereby, not only lust but also other vices like anger, greed, attachment, and ego, they will start to emerge. So that's the reason he has that killing spree. It is only by staying away from all sexual stimuli for at least 5 to 10 years, you will be able to realize finally that there is nothing in opposite gender. It is merely our thoughts that we created that made them look very attractive to us. We must teach this not only to kids but to people of all ages, because everybody is addicted to sex nowadays. So if you give this education, then obviously your daughter is not going to have any reason to waste her time online chatting with strangers, because it is because of her curiosity to know about the opposite sex that she engages in chat with strangers and finally get trapped if her luck is very bad. The same holds true for male child. Now humans have become so addicted that they get stimulated sexually, at least at a subtle level, just at the sight of opposite sex. So in order to come out of that addiction, the first thing you need to do is to see everybody as a soul, not this body. I know it takes effort and it takes time, but you should put constant effort to bring your attention back to the soul where they really are. So if you are able to practice that successfully with your family members, then constantly you can extend that practice with others. So once you are able to see everybody as a soul, then you will have no attraction towards anybody, because your focus will be on just the imperishable soul and not this perishable body. Actually, that's the true freedom. You have saved yourself from the worst addiction of this planet, to which everybody is addicted to, irrespective of their ages. So you need to not only consider yourself to be the soul, but also you need to remember God, who is the Supreme Soul. He is also a soul, which is why he is called Supreme Soul. He is called God Shiva by Hindus, Allah by Muslims, Heavenly Godfather by Christians. The only difference between we souls and the Supreme Soul God is we enter this birth and death cycle and enjoy the happiness of heaven and had to undergo the sorrow and pain of hell, but God stays away from the happiness of heaven and sorrow of hell. The only reason he comes in the end, he enters an old man's body, is to give this knowledge, so that enabling us to become soul conscious again, because that is the criteria needed to enter heaven again. Because after the destruction of this world, this world will be converted to Satyug, heaven, new world. So this happens every 5,000 years once. So which means God comes every 5,000 years once. At the end of this 5,000 year cycle, he gives this knowledge and makes us soul conscious. Then he goes back to where he came from, and we will also be going back with him during the destruction of the world. But depending on the amount of effort we put in making us strongly soul conscious, we'll be able to come into heaven in the beginning stage itself, so that we can enjoy the benefits of heaven for the first 2500 years, where there is absolutely no trace of any sort of sorrow or pain. So for that, the only thing we need to do is to consider ourselves to be this imperishable soul that shines like a tiny star in between the eyebrows, and we need to connect our mind to the Supreme Soul, who is also a tiny star that shines in the golden red colored sky. It is not sky, but we can visualize this light world like that. And we need to listen to the knowledge given by God through that old man's body. He names that old man's Brahma. So the place where we get this direct knowledge from God is Brahma Kumari's Rajyog Meditation Center. You can find the centers across the globe absolutely free of cost, and also you can search for the knowledge of God called Murli, which is spelled Murli. It is available in all languages. You can Google it for yourself, and also I'll be giving the links of some websites and YouTube channels where you can find Murli in all languages, so you can make use of it, because that's the only way to protect ourselves from becoming victim or from becoming predator. So the more you spend time in the remembrance of God, you will find yourself be constantly happy, so that you will be content all the time, so you will not be depressed. So you give no chance for the negative thoughts, including the lustful thoughts, to emerge. So you don't have to act on it, but it is not going to happen overnight. It really takes time and effort. So be patient, be sincere in your effort, and conquer the number one enemy of human, which is lust. So that's how we conquer the whole world, heaven. Om Shanti. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to post this word with your friends and relatives, because this is the only solution to save the entire human population from lust. Thanks for watching.